Quite a few names now. As I mentioned to some of you that were not here, I'll mention this to you. I told you I want those last names spelled correctly, first and last names. If I would have done that on the last test, we would have been in a world of hurt with some of you. But I am guaranteeing you on this test, if we do their names, I want their last name spelled correctly. Do not screw that up, okay? It's very important we do this. Now, let's kind of refresh our memory. The last thing we talked about was President Kennedy being shot at 12:30, and the limousine being rushed to Parkland Hospital and everything that happened there, right? Now, let's focus ourselves back to Daly Plaza shortly after the shots rang out. Okay, we're back in Daly Plaza, okay, where Houston, Elm, and Commerce Street meet. Now, so our overall topic is the Kennedy assassination, post-assassination, and the first subtopic is events in Daly Plaza. Now, within just minutes of the assassination, police surrounded the Texas School Book Depository where they believe the shots came from, okay? So, as we mentioned before, Kennedy's limousine was on Houston Street, going straight toward the Texas School Book Depository, then made that turn on Elm and was going away from the depository when he was shot. But within just minutes of the assassination, police surrounded that building where they thought the shots came from. Up on the 6th floor, Dallas Deputy Sheriff Luke Mooney discovered a sniper's post at a window in the southeast corner of the depository. Again, on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, Dallas Deputy Sheriff Luke Mooney discovered a sniper's post, and it was by a window on the southeast corner of the building. Now, what would be a sniper's post? What would that might look like in a Texas School Book Depository building? Well,
casings.
Okay, you got that right. But
boxes cased
yeah,
for a rifle rest.
There was boxes stacked by the window in which someone would have rested a rifle on. We'll get to the casings in a minute. And here's a picture of the depository right here. I'll repeat it. Here's the depository right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is autographed by Luke Mooney. And what Luke Mooney did is discovered the sniper's post. He went in the southeast corner of the Texas School Book Depository, and he found boxes stacked up, cartons of boxes, right next to the window where somebody would have provided a rest for a rifle. Okay? Now, on one of the cartons that was used for the rifle rest was a half-eaten piece of chicken. So the person was up there and had time before the president got there to actually eat a piece of chicken. So Mooney not only discovered a sniper's nest, he also discovered a half-eaten piece of chicken. Okay? Now, the sniper's post, and I've said this to you before, from where the sniper's post was pointed out the window, it was 88 yards to Kennedy's limousine when he was shot. So it was an 88-yard distance between the 6th floor window where Mooney found the boxes stacked up in the southeastern corner to the presidential limousine where Kennedy was hit, and Conway, 88 yards. Okay? Now, Burke, what else did Mooney discover by that stack of boxes? Okay, 3 spent shell casings. Okay, 3 spent shell casings. So Mooney, Luke Mooney, Deputy Sheriff, discovered a sniper's post on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building by a window in the southeast corner of the depository. He's discovered several cartons of books stacked up to provide a rest for a rifle. One of the cartons used for the rifle rest, on top of it was a half-eaten piece of chicken, and Mooney also found 3 spent shell casings on the floor. Okay? At 12:58 p.m., this is a very important name we'll talk about for quite a while. At 12:58 p.m., Dallas Police Captain John Will Fritz arrived at the Texas School Book Depository. At 12:58 p.m., Dallas Police Captain John Will Fritz arrived at the Texas School Book Depository. The reason Fritz is so important to know is he's going to be the guy that's going to spend most of his time interrogating the assassin in the next few days. Okay? So at 12:58 p.m., Dallas Police Captain John Will Fritz arrived at the Texas School Book Depository. Now, it was at that point when Fritz arrived that Mooney hung his head out the 6th floor window and waved to Sheriff Bill Decker, remember he was one of the guys in the lead automobile, and Captain Fritz. And Mooney said to those guys, come up and send the crime lab officers as well. So at this point, Mooney, at 12:58, Luke Mooney hung his head out the 6th floor window where he discovered that sniper's nest, and he signaled to both Sheriff Bill Decker and Captain Will Fritz, who we just mentioned, and he advised the men to come up and bring some crime lab officers because he had located the area with where the shots were fired. Okay? So at 12:58, shortly after, just at the same time, basically Will Fritz shows up, Mooney hangs his head out the 6th floor window and says to Sheriff Bill Decker and Captain Will Fritz, hey, I found the assassin's sniper post, so to speak. Send up crime lab officers so we can kind of dust this area and figure out what the story is, okay? Now, what's missing here? The gun. Well, at 1:22 p.m., another police officer by the name of Eugene Boone, and here he is right here, Eugene Boone, he discovered the rifle. It was across the room, across the 6th floor, across that room, away from where the shots were fired. So at 1:22 p.m. across the room, police officer Eugene Boone found a rifle. Okay, so the rifle was not in the same spot. What's that?
Okay, it took them 20 minutes to find something.
Well, they were paying attention. They were, when you figure out where the rifle is, it was kind of stashed between cartons and boxes on the other side of the room. They didn't find it until 1:22. And Eugene Boone found it. It was an Italian rifle, a 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano. Okay, it had a 4-power scope and was recovered from, again, the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. It was a 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano, which is an Italian rifle, had a 4-power scope on it, and was found across the room from the sniper's lair on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Now what it was, and we'll talk more about the rifle as we go on later in the class, it was an Italian rifle that the Italians used in World War II. Okay? It's an Italian rifle that was used in World War II. Okay, it was a 6.5 caliber Mannlicher Carcano. Okay? Now, after the rifle was found, Police Lieutenant J.C. Day was summoned to come up to the 6th floor. After the rifle was found, Police Lieutenant J.C. Day was asked to come to the 6th floor. Here's J.C. Day right here. Got all these guys, right in a row, right there.
What was he?
He was a police lieutenant, and they summoned him and told him to come up to the 6th floor. Now, by looking at this picture right here, what maybe did J.C. Day do? It's kind of hard to see maybe from the slippers on you. What's he do in that picture? Holding the rifle up for the press to see. Okay, this is later. But when Lieutenant Day arrived, they handed him the rifle, and he did 3 things to the rifle. Okay? So when Lieutenant Day arrived on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, he was handed the rifle that was found by Eugene Boone, and Lieutenant Day did 3 things. What do you think he might have done? Okay, photographed the rifle. That wouldn't be his job to look for fingerprints, but we'll talk about that. He photographed the rifle. That's why you have a picture of it. He also noted its serial number. Anybody want to guess what the serial number was? C22766, which is on your handout. Okay, so he photographed the rifle, and he noted its serial number, wrote it down. You don't have to know the serial number, I just put it on the handout. But it was C-22766. But you do need to know he noted the serial number. So he photographed it, noted the serial number. and he scratched his name on the stock. That seems odd to you, I know. Yep, he scratched his name on the stock. Why would he do that? Was that just because he wanted to have his initials on it, like somebody might spray their initials on the entrance to the Thermopolis tunnels there? And no, a standard police procedure for marking evidence at the time. You'll hear this on some shell casings later. But he actually scratched his name in the stock so people knew that J.C. Day was the one who collected that evidence. So he photographed the rifle, he noted its serial number, and he scratched his name on the stock, which was standard police procedure for marking evidence at the time. The only thing he did, somebody said something about fingerprints, remember this is 1963, he handled the doggone thing without gloves. So that's a little controversy, and conspiracy theorists grab that crazy. If you look at this picture right here, he has no gloves on, he's got his hand on the butt, and his hand on where you rest your hand. So he didn't, he marked it up, so to speak, with his fingerprints, but we'll talk about that. Okay, so what you have learned today so far is that the sniper's post was found, the rifle was found, and the rifle was noted, okay? It was photographed, serial number was taken down, and the initials were carved in the stock. Now, if you were the Dallas police at this time, what would be your next move? Well, what? Well, maybe not yet. What would you do?
Put out an alert.
Didn't have those, no? Go ahead, say that.
Put out an alert.
Okay, but before you did that, you might want to figure out, okay, we think the shots, pretty sure the shots are from the Texas School Book Depository, so what we're going to do is we're going to take an inventory of employees to see if they're all here. Okay? See if all the employees are here. Okay, so what the police did is they took an inventory. They got together, and we'll talk about this, they got together with the person that was the boss there, which we'll talk about later, and they did an inventory of employees that were working at the Texas School Book Depository. And they soon discovered that one of the employees was missing. His name, Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay? So they did an inventory of employees that were working at the Texas School Book Depository. Everybody was accounted for and in the depository, or at least they knew where they were, except for Lee Harvey Oswald. Wait till you hear what he did. Now, let's get back to what Michael said. Okay? The next step by police was probably to relay an all police units bulletin to what this guy looked like. Well, at the time, the first description wasn't from the guy that was the boss that gave the description of Oswald. It was from a guy by the name of Howard Brennan. He was an eyewitness to the shooting. So the police department obtained their first description of the shooter from an eyewitness by the name of Howard Brennan. Now Brennan was standing about 107 feet from the depository, the front door of the depository, when he witnessed what he thought was the third shot. Okay, so Brennan was standing about 107 feet from the front of the depository, according to him, when he witnessed what he thought was the final shot, in this case the third shot. He said he saw a man on the 6th floor of the depository fire the shot. He actually said he saw the person fire the third or final shot. He told police that he saw it, and he gave him a description. Once they got that description by Brennan, then they did what Michael said, and they sent an all-police bulletin out with that description to all the police in that area to pick up anyone that fit that particular description. Okay? So is everybody following me okay so far, what's happened here?
How many feet?
107 feet is how far he was standing out in front of the depository when he supposedly said he looked up and saw a man fire a third shot. Gave a description. Now, think about this. Within 60 minutes, by 1:30, the Dallas police had these 5 things. Okay, within an hour of the shots being fired, by 1:30, like within 60 minutes of the assassination, what had the police department had? What did they know?
And all that things.
Well, just would be real specific. What have they found? They found a rifle used in the shooting. They found the sniper's post used in the shooting. 3 spent shells. A description of the suspect, and what else? The suspect's name. So within 30, people, conspiracy theorists would like you to believe that these guys bungled everything and screwed everything up. Well, within an hour after the shots, they had the sniper's post, 3 spent shells, the sniper's rifle, a description of the assassin, and his name. Not bad in 60 minutes. So again, within 60 minutes of the assassination, the Police Department had found the sniper's post, the spent shells, the rifle used in the shooting, a description of the suspect, and his name. Okay, that covers our first subtopic, events in Daley Plaza. Now, we're going to tell you about the route that Oswald took from Daley Plaza until he was captured. Okay, the route of Lee Harvey Oswald from Daley Plaza. And again, we kind of got to back up to like 12:30 again so you can get all this figured out. Okay, the route of Lee Harvey Oswald from Daley Plaza. Now, picture yourself, shots have been fired. 1 minute later, at 12:31 p.m., 1 minute after the final shots were fired, Dallas police officer Marion Baker ran into the Texas School Book Depository with his pistol drawn. Okay, at 12:31 p.m., 1 minute after the shots, Dallas police officer Marion Baker ran into the Texas School Book Depository with his pistol drawn. Remember I said they surrounded the depository within minutes of the assassination? He was the first police officer in at 12:31. Now, he was a motorcycle patrolman in the motorcade, and he flanked the rear of President Kennedy's limousine. So, Corson, Cheney, and Baker were on motorcycles within the vicinity of the president's limousine. And what he did when the shots were fired, he basically jumped off his motorcycle and ran straight into the depository with his pistol drawn, because he thought he heard shots from there. Okay? Now, once he got into the depository, he immediately ran into Roy Truly, who is the superintendent of the Texas School Book Depository. So as soon as, almost immediately, that Marion Baker got into the depository, he ran into building superintendent Roy Truly. Who is he? He's the overall boss of everybody that works at the depository. So once in the depository, Baker immediately ran into building superintendent Roy Truly. Now Truly, as soon as he saw Baker, he led him to the back stairwell of the depository where the elevators were. But Baker didn't want to wait for an elevator, so he just ran up the stairs and Truly followed him. Okay, so picture that in your mind. They get in there, he runs into Truly. He wants to know where the elevator is. He runs him to the elevator. Truly runs Baker to the elevator. It's busy. He doesn't want to wait. And so he just basically runs up the stairs, Baker does, with Truly following him. Now this is what's kind of weird. On the second floor of the depository, Baker caught the movement out of the corner of his eye. He caught a movement. And he looked through a glass door going up the stairway, and he saw a man in a room that would be later identified as Lee Harvey Oswald. So Baker's running up the stairs from floor 1 with Truly behind him, and as they get up to the second floor, a movement catches Baker's eye. He looks through a glass door and he sees a man. Okay? Baker confronts this man, who is Oswald, and he turns to Superintendent Truly and says, "Do you know this man? Does he work here?" Well, what was Truly's response? "Yes, he works for me." So what did Baker and Truly do? Left and continued up the stair. True. So again, I'll repeat that so you kind of get it down. So Baker at 12:31 jumps off his motorcycle, runs into the Texas School Book Depository. He immediately encounters building superintendent Roy Truly. He asked him to take him to the elevator so he can get up the stairs. The elevator's busy. They decide to go up the stairs on their own. Baker first, Truly behind him. They get up to the second floor. Something catches Baker's eye out of the corner of his eye. He looks, he sees a guy in a room through a door. He goes in. He asks Truly if he knows this man and asks him if he worked there. And Truly said, yes, he works for me. They leave and continue up the stairs.
We feel so bad.
Yeah. Well, at 12:35, the Dallas police decide to do what? Lock down the building. Okay? So they lock down the building at 12:35. The problem is, Oswald is gone. Within 3 minutes of the assassination, he has made his way down to the second floor and then out the door. So by the time the police lock the door down at 12:35, he's gone. Okay? He is gone. Now, it's important that we tell you and you know where he goes. Okay, he leaves the Texas School Book Depository and walks east to the corner of Elm and Murphy Street. It's on your ID sheet to kind of help you out. Okay, he leaves the front door of the depository, walks east to the corner of Elm and Murphy Street.
Is it Murphy?
Murphy, yep.
Well,
Did I spell it wrong?
M-U-R.
M-U-R-P-H-Y. Do I have it spelled wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's M-U-R-P-H-Y. I got it, no, okay, sorry. Okay. He walks 7 blocks and gets on a city bus at 12:40 p.m. He walks 7 blocks from the depository and boards a city bus at 12:40 p.m. How the hell do we know that? Because of the bus ticket, which is on the back of this sheet I gave you, and a picture of the bus driver, Cecil McWaters. So, he walks 7 blocks east of the depository. He gets on a city bus at 12:40 p.m., according to bus driver Cecil McWaters. That's how we know that, because he testified to that. So, Oswald walks 7 blocks east of the depository and he boards a city bus at 12:40 according to bus driver Cecil McWaters. Now McWaters later states that Oswald did not get on the bus at a regular bus stop. He knocked on the door, entered the bus, and paid his fare and sat down. McWaters didn't know any different. He didn't know what was going on, really. So Oswald isn't at a bus stop. He just basically walked 7 blocks and thinks, this will be a good idea to get on a bus. The bus stops, not at a stop, but stops. He knocks on the door. McWaters lets him in. He paid his fare. Sat down. Now, Oswald got impatient. There was a lot of heavy traffic down in that area because of what happened. So Oswald got impatient with the bus, so he got off the bus at 12:44 p.m. So he only rode the bus for 4 minutes. You could see it wasn't going anywhere very fast because of the slow traffic, and as a result of that, he got off.
At what time?
12:44. Well, he leaves the bus wherever he got off, and he walks to a nearby Greyhound bus station. Okay, he gets off the bus at 12:44 and walks to a nearby Greyhound bus station where he catches a taxi cab at 12:47 p.m. So he gets off the bus at 12:44 because it's too slow. He walks to a nearby Greyhound bus station and he catches a taxi cab at 12:47 p.m. This is an amazing flight. Well, he asked the taxi driver to take him to the 500 block of North Beckley Street. Okay? He asked the taxi driver to take him to the 500 block of North Beckley Street. Farther down you're going to have where it says it's got an address, you can take it off of that. So Oswald asked the taxi driver to take him to the 500 block of North Beckley Street. Now this was in Oak Cliff, which is a suburb of Dallas. Okay? It wasn't in Dallas, it was in a place called Oak Cliff. So Oswald gets on a taxi cab at 12:47, and he asks the taxi driver to take him to the 500 block of North Beckley Street, which was located in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. It was a suburb, okay? Well, he didn't give an address, did he? So the bus driver takes him to the 500 block. It's an intersection of Neely and Beckley Street, 500 block, and drops him off at 12:54 p.m. So the taxi driver takes him to the 500 block of North Beckley Street and dropped him off. So he really didn't get him to the 500 block, he got him to the intersection of Neely and Beckley. At 12:54, he drops him off at the intersection of Neely and Beckley. The Neely, if you're interested, is Neeley. So he drops him off there, which is 3 blocks from his destination, where he wants to go. So Oswald gets dropped off at Neely and Beckley Street. At 12:54, he walks 3 blocks to the boarding house where he was living. Anybody know what a boarding house is? Where people that have a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom home rent out one room to 3 or 4 people. Okay, that's a boarding house. So what does that tell you about Oswald if he's living in a boarding house? Or what else?
His wife kicked him out.
Possibly, if he's married, which you don't know, his wife probably kicked him out.
His wife took a temporary.
We talked about that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, to give you a sneak preview, he and his wife are separated, and they have 2 children. And then she's living with another lady by the name of Ruth Payne, and he's, what? Oh, yeah, okay, story about that later. Anyway, so is his wife. But anyway, he's living in a boarding house. So after departing the taxi cab, he walks back to his boarding house, which is 1026 North Beckley Street, which is on your ID sheet. And he arrives there at 12:59 p.m. So he gets out of the taxi cab at 12:54. He walks 3 blocks to his boarding house at 1026 North Beckley Street, arriving at 12:59.
He just shot the president.
Yeah, he just shot, yeah, okay.
He's got a little adrenaline.
Okay, so after departing the taxi cab, he walked back to the boarding house at 1026 North Beckley Street and arrived at 12:59. Okay, let's continue on here because you think he's fast now, he's going to get faster. Once he got to his boarding house, he grabbed a light colored coat and a .38 caliber revolver. So he arrives at his boarding house, he goes in, he grabs a light colored coat and a .38 caliber revolver and left the boarding house at 1:03 p.m. So he rushes into his boarding house, he grabs a light colored coat, he grabs a .38 caliber revolver and leaves the boarding house at 1:03 p.m. How the hell do we know that? Eyewitness, Earlene Roberts, who was a housekeeper, 1:03. Earlene Roberts, who was a housekeeper for one of the residents. Okay? So Oswald grabbed his light colored coat and his .38 caliber revolver and left the boarding house at 1:03 p.m. according to Earlene Roberts, who was a housekeeper for one of the other residents. Okay, this is what Mrs. Roberts was quoted as saying. You don't have to write this down. But this is, listen to what she said. This is what she said later. Oswald was not running, but using a fast walk when he entered the boarding house. He went out walking fast the same way as I was listening to the broadcast about Kennedy. She didn't know anything, she didn't know anything of it. She just watched him go in and out. Now, from this point until he reached 10th Street and Patton Avenue, I should put these on your ID sheet, but I'll write it down. From the time he left the boarding house until he reached the intersection of 10th Street and Patton Avenue in Oak Cliff, nobody knows what he did, other than he got there. Okay? So, there were no specific witnesses to the exact route Oswald took until he reached 10th Street and Patton Avenue, which is in Oak Cliff. Now, if you want to know location, it was about, it was a little less than a mile from his boarding house and approximately 2 miles from Daly Plaza where he shot the president. Okay, so he is at 10th and Patton Avenue, 10th Street and Patton Avenue, which is about less than a mile from his boarding house, a little less than a mile, but 2 miles from the assassination scene. Obviously, if we know he's there, something happened, right? At 1:11 p.m., police officer J.D. Tippett was doing his normal rounds, patrol, and he noticed a man that he evidently believed fit the description of the missing employee. Okay? So at 1:11 p.m., police officer J.D. Tippett was doing his patrol, and he notices a man who he believes, evidently, it has to be kind of conjecture, he believes fits the description of the missing employee that's gone all over. Remember that all points bulletin? So what Tippett does is he pulls over and he asks Oswald to come to his car. He's sitting in his car, Tippett. Oswald complies with his request. He actually walks up to the police car and leans in on the passenger side and looks at, car's facing this way. He leans in and talks with Tippett. Well, Tippett evidently stepped out of his car then and walked around. Now, there's a reason we know this, but anyway. So Oswald walks around and Tippett gets out of his car. So Tippett gets out of his car and begins to walk around the car to confront Oswald, who's where? On the other side. Okay? So again, Oswald complied with the officer's request. He leaned on the passenger side window of the police car, talked to Tippett. Tippett then stepped out of his car and walked around to confront Oswald. When Tippett did that, Oswald pulled out his .38 caliber pistol and shot Tippett 4 times across the hood of the police car. Shot him 4 times. So when Tippett began to walk around to confront Oswald, Oswald took out his .38 and shot Tippett 4 times across the hood of that police car. 4 times. Tippett was hit once in the chest, twice in the stomach, and fell. Oswald then fired the 4th shot, point-blank range, into his temple, killing him instantly. So he shot 1, 2, 3. When he fell, he went up 4.
What happened?
Yep. So Tippett was shot once in the chest and twice in the stomach as he shot him from across the hood. As he fell, Oswald came around and put the final shot in Tippett's temple, killing him instantly. Okay, this gets better. Now, they say at least a dozen people witnessed that, including William Scoggins and Helen Markham. So at least a dozen people witnessed that, including William Scoggins and Helen Markham. Now picture this, you're Helen Markham. You witness him shooting the police officer, and Oswald takes off and he walks very fast, right straight toward you. She was so terrified about what she had seen, she basically just covered both eyes like this. Oswald approached her, mumbled something, and kept on going. Now, I'm going to give you this tomorrow, but here is the affidavit, copy of the original affidavit of Helen Markham. Okay, here's what she said. She said this: at approximately 1:06, November 22nd, 1963, I was standing on the corner of East 10th and Patton Street, waiting for traffic to go by when I saw a squad car stop in front of 404 East 10th, about 50 feet from where I was standing. I saw a young white man walk up to the squad car opposite the driver's side. lean over and put his arms on the door of the car for a few seconds, then straightened up and stepped back from the car 3 or 4 feet. At this point, the officer got out of the squad car and started around in front of the car, and just as he got even with the left front wheel, this young white man shot the officer and the officer fell to the pavement. I screamed and the man ran west on East 10th, across Patton Street, and went out of sight. That's her sworn statement. I'll give that to you tomorrow, because I got another sworn statement I'm going to give it with you. Okay? So where's Oswald right now? He's just shot a police officer on 10th Street and Patton Avenue, and he's heading out somewhere else, and he'll be confronted by several people until he gets caught. Okay? Crazy story. It's intense. Yes. Probably when we get into the interrogation of Oswald, not this test material, but next. Before Christmas, yeah. Yeah, we're going to finish this up and probably, we'll get 2 test materials in before Christmas. If you'd like to come up and see Luke Mooney, Eugene Boone, or J.C. Day, you're welcome. No cameras.
Yeah, that makes sense because
What's the plan?
and forward.
Lecture.
Maybe lecture day. We don't go on.
Go on.
I'll be my history is that I'll be shot the first time and the second shot was fired. One of the Secret Service agents in the car in front of him turned around and responded.
Oh, yeah, with what?
Turned up and pulled his gun.
And missing this class to do it?
Fired.
All the classes, not sure. All me too.
That is what they said.
Oh yeah,
How would
Bad
it be,
news.
why would
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Why would you have his gun on
Are
that?
you gonna put these on the
Are
list?
you serious?
Oh, that.
You don't get to be a Secret
I
Service
got a
agent.
black.
Yes. I'm recording the